Again on a Saturday. This is going to be one of those days where we're locked in just learning and teaching. I am the High Priestess Phoenix, Lilith reincarnated, the Dark Goddess, your spiritual healer, teacher, shaman, seer, oracle, light worker, starseed, earth angel, mystic, medium, super witch, the patroness of witches and fucking priestesses, yogi, guru, and messenger of God, with another message. This one was really funny. I said it to the guy as I walked out. I was like, the world needs to hear this. So I went into the witchcraft store to go get some sage, right? And as I'm sitting there and he's pouring it in, there's little baggies and it says, it calls her Persephone. Fine. I said, tell me what it says, Persephone's descent bath. So I grabbed the bag of it and I asked him, what was the intentions put into this particular blend? He said, well, taking the descent with Persephone, as he said over and over, which was irritating my flesh, is to take your descent into your shadows and to learn your shadows and to come out more resilient. And I was like, okay. And I looked at him, I was like, as Persephone reincarnated, I tell you that that's not what you're going to discover with that passage of my life. So that's the Christ consciousness. Persephone was laid there to witness other people's shadows and show compassion and love. Not to witness her own, not to discover her own, but to discover the world outside of her world that existed and show love and compassion for it. She was nothing more than a light put in a dark place. I was like, if your intentions are to do such things as to discover your shadows, then most definitely you should be invoking my other form, which would be Medusa. And that's it. And so I said that. And of course, I've seen this guy. He used to work at a different spiritual store, and now he works there. And so I've seen him for years, and I've always told him a thing or two. And I was like, right before I went to leave, pay my $1.35, drop my extra 2 cents on this guy. I was like, if you practice the way that other people practice, you're only going to get the same results that they got. And everybody was limited in what they could achieve through the practice. He said, you're very right. Meaning, when it all came down to it, it's like you're selling a bunch of bags of this shit to invoke Persephone because you read somewhere that she was a goddess of hell and she's gonna take you through your own personal hell. Okay, fine. You fucking read that somewhere. Fine, I'll leave that alone. I'm not gonna sit here and fucking argue that, whatever. But with that understanding, now all of you are practicing something that you don't understand. In essence, is like you're only gonna get what other people before you practice. Meaning, going back to Tony Stark, going back to Marshall, you can take the words off this paper before I write them, but it's not going to mean shit to you. It's like you don't understand the full intensity of it. It's like if you want to understand your shadows, then you go into your shadows and you go in with the right person. You know what I mean? If you want to understand your evil ways, then you go in with the evil. You don't, you know what I mean? You don't tiptoe around the bullshit. But ultimately, when it comes down to these practitioners of all crafts, down to Christianity, it's tradition, it's ritual tradition, that this is what it is, and you will not incorporate any new teachings because you are orthodox to your previous teachings. Meaning you're not going to be a better Christian than the people that you've learned from. You will be no better than them. It goes back to it, you know what I mean? You're just an apprentice of the teachings until you take the teachings to a new level. You go from the student to the teacher by your, rebellion into discovering more, not staying in the limitations of what someone says, discovering really what it is for yourself. And I talked to a lot of people. My daughter and I were picking up the fish, and she's like, it depends on. I don't eat fish. We look at her, we're buying, fish, and I'm like, it's an offering to God, right? And she kind of looks at me, and I was like, I serve all forms of God, all forms, and this was a way to serve God. So I serve it to the animals. This is an offering to the animals, so I don't eat this. And she starts out, she said, I am a Christian, but I don't go to church. I said, no, church is just the study of your relationship with Christ. You have a relationship with Christ outside of the church. That doesn't deem you bad, but the church will say that you're not doing it right, that you can't have a relationship outside of the church with your God. But that's exactly what Christ said. Ignorant, in my ignorance, I could have went by your word, your false teaching. If you take a bath in this is going to help you deal with your shadow work. And that's it. Who taught you that? Well, they're going to tell all these biographies of references to shit they read about her in a book. So they can make it seem like they know what the fuck they're talking about. And now you're practicing what they preached and everybody else that purchases this shit. Meaning you believe what they said. So you sit down in your bath with the beliefs. If I put this in the water, this will happen. Depending on, you know what I mean? Now you're putting yourself, you're actually just doing it. You didn't need the outside elements to do it. You just, I mean, that's going back to Thor. He had to tell him the power was outside of him because he couldn't harness the power that was inside of him. So he told him it was outside of him. Meaning you didn't need to go buy that shit to go look at your shadows, bitch. You can just take a nice little bath and sit there and think about your bad feelings. You don't need to focus on what happened in this goddess's life to look at your life. And that's what I teach in the book. My Dark Goddess Reclaimed book is looking at their stories and how these dark goddesses and their experiences resonate in your life. And that's going back to Sheila Nagig from my earlier video. You know what I mean? Look at how you used your charm and your seduction and your magnetism to get what you wanted, to bring attention, to be the life of the party, to get, you know what I mean, to have that attention that you were always seeking. And look at how low it took you. And that was kind of the video I made earlier. It's like, yeah, I ended up with some, you know what I mean, just because I'd rather have somebody's attention than no attention. And that was it. I went out with attention seeking, you know what I mean, behaviors and traits. Why? Because I wasn't being cared for. And that was my minimal way of caring for myself, as most do. So that's what it is important to learn these dark goddesses, because their feelings and their experiences. Now, we can tell about ancient women in time, you know what I mean? Like myself, we can talk about my stories of all times and how the overcoming. Or you can start overcoming and tell your stories, and you become the ancestors. You become the stories that our children talk about. Your teachings are the ones that they study from your written hand, what worked for me. And that's what I always teach you in my teachings. Yeah, I learned the ancient ways, but I do what I know is right for me. Meaning I don't add all that shit. You know what I mean? I don't have to do what you says is the regiment for this to work. I can make it work with my own faith and with my own belief and with my own elemental, you know what I mean, uses. My understanding of the elements, right? And that's just it. Who knows what's in it? If I opened up that bag, you know, I opened it up and I looked at it, I could tell you what's in it because I know my elements. Meaning, are you invoking Persephone, or you just want them to focus on Persephone as we put these elements into the water and you soak in the elements, right? So ultimately, you know what I mean? You're not going to get everybody that's buying that $8 fucking bath wash. Nobody's going to get a better result than the other because they're all with the same intentions. They all want the same thing out of it, right? And that's it. It's like, you know, Harry Potter, I'm seeing that book when he got the book. It's like he was able to break, and it was actually, you know what I mean, it was Voldemort's book, which was he was drawn to what lied within him. How did he get the book? Because the book was made for the piece of him that's already lives inside of him, right? And only he knew how to break the potions because he didn't follow it. I mean, in essence, the book taught him, which was Voldemort, which was inside of him. You know what I mean? Taught him what he didn't, you know, taught him how to break the rules and what he didn't know and how to be more, you know, and that's it, is breaking the rules is finding a new way. That you stay within the perimeters of this is the way that it's done, but it can be done another way. And in doing it another way, you can probably find a better way to get things done. Or you can play it safe and do things the way that people do things. That's the whole point of it. I'm talking about magical practices. I'm talking about religious practices. I'm talking about, you know what I mean, your work behaviors. I'm talking about social behaviors. I'm talking about driving behaviors. We talked about that too. Is like, I know that this is a one-way street, But what are the consequences if I break this rule? Will I get from A to B faster? What are the consequences? It's the same consequence. If I break this, if I break the one-way rule on this rule, it's the same consequence for any other traffic, you know what I mean? So I'm going to pay the same ticket if I break the one way as if I run a light or if I'm going too fast. The rules are the rules are the rules. The consequence is the same for all rules, and that's what it is. Is there a sin that's above all sin? No. God looks at you like, oh, you think I haven't seen this before? You think you're the first to try to pull this shit? And then it's like, will you ever forgive me? Of course I'll forgive you. I forgave them, I'll forgive you. But that's where a lot of people, Christianity wants to live off of this. I can still be an asshole and be forgiven. Like, I'm not going to learn my ways. I'm just going to, preach it. I'm not going to learn from my mistakes. I'm just going to keep continuing to do them and asking for forgiveness. I can get away with this. I'll just keep getting away with this. The only one you're cheating is yourself, bro. Truthfully. And they say that all the time. Meaning you're cheating yourself away from the experience of learning this lesson and stopping this behavior so that you can have better experiences and have better behaviors. And that's where it is the bus stops here, where you become aware. That's where they're like, your karma. No, you had karma coming. Now you're facing it. And that's it. Going back to Mike Millian, I keep having these, we're having these connections. It's like, he keeps asking himself, and that's where you need to be. What's wrong with me? Why did she do this? Why did she come to me? Why is God here? What was God trying to teach me? What was she doing here? Why did she want to bring God to my door? Makes you aware. What have you done? What have you done? And that's it. Is you become aware so you cannot do that. Don't do that to another person, Mike. Don't treat people like that when they come in the doors. Don't treat people like you did me. It wasn't fair. I survived it, but it's not, you're damaging people the way you're treating people. Your fucking work ethics and your conniving ways and, the drug use and shit. Some of us just want to, and that's going back to it. That was a big thing. It's like, there's drugs in every studio, but not everybody that goes to make music wants to come out with a fucking drug addiction. And yeah, it's a friendly environment of let's share, but then before you know it, you're part of something you didn't want to be part of when all you wanted to do was be part of creativity. And that was the thing. It's like, you guys hide all of this shit that's real. This is real. It really happens. But in the sense of, why are you really doing this? Because you want to make a couple dollars? Right? Why don't you go make an honest dollar? Because you want to be social? You want to, you know what I mean? Let's do some blow. You want to do an Adderall? Let's get high and make music. How about let's just make music without getting high? Let's get into our feelings without getting high. Not to say that it's not, and then we've had these talks and shit. He's got a wife, a great wife, but he's over there fucking sleeping with all of the fucking groupies that come into the studio. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to this woman and to yourself and to the women that walk through here? And again, I didn't sleep with him, but that could have been me because I played that role with others. And that's all it is we become aware of our behaviors, that we see it in ourselves and we see it in others, and we try to stop it so that we can hopefully save somebody from the pain and suffering that we've been through, or at least if we didn't save them from what they went through, we can at least save them from the shame, regret, blame, and embarrassment of what we've all been through. And that's what I'm going to bring up to you here in the Sheila Nagig. But it's all a big roundabout story. Is you can't be better than your mom if you're following your fucking mother's rules. You're not going to be a better fucking, you know what I mean? You're not going to be a better fucking magician than the fucking magician that taught you. If you're following their rules. It does call for a bit of rebellion. You have to step out of the norm and the safety to find out what really is right for you. Because even though this is right for you, it may not be right for me. And that goes back to breakfast. I just want to point out, I did get my pudding, which I'm going to have later, not for breakfast. And I got me cereal and milk. The kids got amazing cereal. Some strawberry chocolate fucking crave amazing cereals that they never had when I was a kid. You know what I got? The same boring cereal that I ate when I was a kid that made me happy. I got Life cereal. Cinnamon Life. There's a million new things out there that you would never touch what I have touched. But that works for me. All of that sugar and all of that, that doesn't work for me. When I was your age, I would have loved to have that. But I'm a little too old now. I'm like a Cheerios girl. I'm pretty old. In the sense of, Cheerios is what we ate when we were little, and now that's what we eat when we are big. They try to make them more digestible. In the sense of, it's a big roundabout circle. And I just wanted to point that out. It's like, we got two different ways because we live two different ways. That's okay. Going back to, the practices. Just because you don't practice Christianity like these so-called Christians doesn't mean you're not Christ-like. And that's the biggest thing that I stand for, is you can't tell me that I'm not a servant of God just because I haven't served like you do. I serve harder and in a way that you would never. But that doesn't mean that you're not a servant and you're not faithful to your God too. And that you don't have as much faith in all of that too. So I just wanted to point that out. But at the same time, you're not going to be like me if you don't learn like me. You're only going to be as good as the church. Just keep that in mind. Laters, haters.